we can afford. I know I'm being banged up by the Republicans, but
And Saudi Arabia is known for its desert and intense heat.
There is great significance to the passage of time.
Whatever we have in store.
Joe Biden's student loan debt, quote-unquote, forgiveness plan is hitting a huge roadblock. Also, the Treasury Department devised an equity council, which is not great at all. Veep versus Veep, Kamala Harris versus the HBO TV show. Saudi Arabia is hosting the Winter Games. A whole bunch of people died in an Indonesian soccer match. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go.
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is October 4th. 10-4. The year of our Lord 2022. Thanks so much for watching this morning. Things are looking like they're running a little bit slow. Not necessarily late, because we already also are that, but just slow. The computer seems to be processing slower. It seems to be streaming slower. But regardless, we're going to power through it. I want to quickly get to what we left off yesterday. I didn't really get to talk about. Trouble for the student loan debt transfer, and I've been calling it the student loan debt transfer and not the student loan forgiveness plan, because that's effectively what it is. Forgiveness would be completely eliminating the debt and everybody saying, well, it'll be fine. In reality, it's a debt transfer to people who pay taxes, which is effectively everybody, and also then effectively giving debt forgiveness, quote unquote, to people who are a very, very small percentage of the population. Big number, but still relatively small when it comes to the overall population, and you're going to get a bunch of people paying for their colleges that didn't go to college or didn't have the opportunity, anything like that. Check this clip out from the president as he's talking. It's some gala over the weekend, something that he was at. Talked about this debt transfer thing, and then we'll give you the big hiccup that got sent through. Well, there's a lot of hiccups going on. We'll give you all the details after this. Watch this. If you also haven't already, would really appreciate it if you click the little like button, the little share button over here. Helps us out, continue doing this show each and every morning. But without further ado, here's Joe Biden talking about getting hammered by Republicans for the student loan debt transfer. Watch this.
we can afford. I know I'm being banged up by the Republicans, but come bring it on. We can afford to cancel $10,000 in student debt and $20,000 if you had a Pell Grant. For Americans making under 125 grand, 70% of black college students receive a Pell Grant. For many black students, these loan forgiveness will wipe out the student debt completely. For others, it will provide significant relief. It's a game changer.
Okay, so, geez, I'm pretty sure a lot of that is not true. I don't know for a fact if 70% of black students that go to college get a Pell Grant. That seems high, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm not aware of that number. But that seems very, very high. And also, he said another thing that just seems wrong on its face. I don't actually know. But he said it's going to wipe out entirely the debt of so many people. I don't think that's true. I think most people have more than $10,000 worth of debt when it comes to college. Anyways, the White House late last week released something that I feel like people should be aware of, especially when it comes to this student loan debt forgiveness thing. Until Thursday, this is, where is the CNBC, I believe? Borrowers with privately held federal student loans qualified for relief if they consolidated their loans into the direct loan program. According to new guidance put out by the Biden administration, however, borrowers with FFEL loans or Perkins loans not held by the department can no longer obtain a one-time debt relief through consolidation and will only qualify for forgiveness if they applied for consolidation before September 29th. Bottom line is, if you have a federally held loan, I would imagine that you didn't apply for consolidation before September 29th. because that was the day that this thing went into. They said, all right, today, if you haven't applied by today, you ain't getting it. If people didn't know they needed to apply for consolidation and are still kind of hoping and expecting the government to pay it off for them, which I think is a bad thing to try and expect, but if they didn't know, they probably didn't apply for that. Bottom line is, if you have privatized loans, the Biden administration is now saying, hey, you ain't getting no money. Michelle Dominio, the deputy director of education at public policy group Third Way, told CNBC the development will affect a small percentage of borrowers. About 4.1 million federal borrowers have $108 billion in loans held by private lenders as of June 30th, according to the most recent federal data. So it sounds like about 4 million borrowers are going to be ineligible for the loans. Now, I think this is a hurdle for the Biden administration, but at the same time, it's a small hurdle with the mountain that they have to climb in getting this through, which I don't think they will. Ultimately, I don't think anybody's actually going to get any money for federal student loans because they're being sued every which way. They're being sued by think tank groups that are like, hey, this is super unconstitutional. I think the founding fathers made a pretty big point that debt forgiveness is a big problem, especially if the federal government were to participate in debt forgiveness. But outside of that, several state attorneys generals, I believe 6 of them, are suing the Biden administration, again, for the unfairness of this idea. And also, you can't do it constitutionally. This would be the biggest expenditure by a single person in history, I think. I think that this was going to cost, what, $300 or $400 billion? Nobody's ever spent that kind of money, and especially a president without the act of Congress behind him. So there's that. I don't want to belabor on that because I thought this was interesting. And we've got some kind of just interesting stories from around the world that I want to get to. But really quick, before we move on to those interesting stories from around the world, equity. We talked about equity quite a bit yesterday. Equity is a bad word. Nobody should use the term equity seriously. And anybody who says, oh, we need to push for equity, should not take them seriously at all, because equity is different from equality. Equality is a constitutional right that everybody has, and if you don't want to give people equality, you're a bad American. Bottom line. But equity is an entirely different monster that says everything has to be even at the end, while the outcome of everything has to be equal. That's just not how the world works. If you want to look at it from strictly a, physical standpoint. If one person eats salad every single day and the other person eats pizza every single day, the outcome is not going to be the same. You know why? Because those are 2 different things and 2 different inputs, and that's only one variable that we're talking about. What you're trying to do when you quote-unquote promote equity is control all of the different variables in all the different people's lives so that everything turns out equal in the end. Effectively, it's communism or socialism. So be careful of that word equity. And beware of it when it's being pushed upon you. Having said that, the Biden administration is deepening its efforts to focus on reducing racial inequality with the formation of a new advisory committee that will help the U.S. Treasury carry out policies that aim towards narrowing economic disparities faced by communities of color. In other words, an equity committee. Exactly what I said you should be careful of. This is from the New York Times, by the way. The Treasury Advisory Committee on Racial Equity will include 25 members from academia, business, and advocacy groups. It will convene 4 times a year to evaluate and offer guidance to the Treasury Department and its leadership on an array of programs that touch nearly every corner of the economy. So 25 people are going to meet quarterly, 4 times a year. I would be curious to see what their salaries are, given that it's a federal government committee in the Treasury. I would imagine it's pretty good. So let's just say, hypothetically, they're making $100,000. I probably think that's low. Maybe even, let's just say $50,000 to meet, again, 4 times a year. How many of you guys are getting $50,000 to meet 4 times a year? And yeah, maybe there are business people that volunteer for these committees, but I would imagine that this particular group, assembled in the way that it is assembled, is not going to be a volunteer group. I would imagine they're going to get paid, and I would imagine They're going to be paid handsomely for 4 meetings a year. The Biden administration officials say the focus on equity will help unlock economic potential that has gone for decades untapped. Unlikely, but we won't get caught up on that. There's a lot of thoughts that I have. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has made racial equity a top priority for the department. Last year, she appointed the Treasury's first counselor for racial equity to improve engagement with diverse communities. Bottom line here is nobody is anti more minorities getting better opportunities. Nobody is against that. Nobody should be against that. And if you are against that, you are, in fact, a racist. However, the federal government taking precedence to create racial equity by knocking other races down is a massive problem. You can't fight racism with racism. Seems like an obvious thing that you should just inherently know, but apparently not the case with the Biden administration. Yet, this is again from the New York Times, yet the administration's focus on equity has at times drawn backlash. A program that was created as a part of the American Rescue Plan of 2021 offered debt relief to Black and other farmers of color. It was blocked by a group of white farmers claiming the lawsuit would discriminate against them because it did. And then he brought up the article again in the New York Times. I don't know who the author is. Brought up Vice President Kamala Harris attracted criticism when conservative commentators accused her of suggesting that communities of color should be prioritized in hurricane relief, which she did. We played that clip yesterday. She absolutely did that. And that is not the way that hurricane relief should be handled. It should be divvied out based on need. Let me see. White House officials said Monday that all communities would quickly receive help, but the Biden administration would be mindful that poorer communities often have a harder time gaining access to assistance. I don't know about that. Yeah, as long as everybody's treated fairly and as long as the funds and resources are allocated to the people with the most need, I don't have a problem with that. But anyways, check out or make sure you keep an eye on if you can, and we'll try to bring you any updates here, the Equity Commission at the Treasury. That's, again, 25 people that are going to be probably paid fairly well to meet 4 times a year. So that's just great now, isn't it? I want to move to a couple different things that I thought were fascinating that happened over the weekend. Not good, by the way, just fascinating. 125 people dead at a soccer match in India. I know you might think, what the heck does that have to do with me? Probably nothing, but it is a fascinating story, and some of the video footage of it, especially if you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Getter, Instagram, wherever it is that you're watching this show, it is fascinating to see how the police interact with civilians in different countries. Maybe you're a person that wants to defund the police or whatever. But you should be, regardless, grateful at how composed the police are in the United States. Do they make mistakes? Absolutely. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Having said that, regardless of if you think the police in the United States are the worst thing in the world, they're not. And some of this video is proof of that. This is a clip, I believe, from Sky Sports, just kind of outlining what happened. Well, the brief summary here is that the home soccer team in this Indonesian Premier League, their top league, lost at home for the first time in 23 years, I think. So people stormed the field. The police, who are crazy unorganized, and you'll see that in these videos, and I'll make it a bigger point in the second clip that we play, didn't have any form of organization and just started spraying tear gas on people, pepper spray on people, until they fled the stadium and stampeded and either suffocated in the tunnels or died by being stampeded. So gnarly stuff going on in Indonesia. Watch this clip and we'll kind of discuss on the other side. Check it out.
A tense football rivalry, an unexpected victory, then an unspeakable tragedy. As a match between Indonesian sides Arema FC and Persebaya Surabaya in the city of Malang drew to a close, Arima's fans, who'd just seen their side lose this fixture for the first time in 23 years, ran onto the pitch. They clashed with police. Players too were reportedly attacked. Amid the chaos, police fired tear gas. That in turn caused panic, then a stampede in which scores of people were crushed to death. Indonesian authorities have claimed the stadium was over capacity.
So, again, regardless of how you think about the United States, that stuff doesn't happen here. An overcapacity stadium, and then the police having such a terrible response to. Did you see how? Okay, we'll play this next clip. See how scattered things are when police are in riot formation here, and we've seen that happen more times than I would like in the last 2 years. When the police in the United States are trying to control what is deemed to be a riot, they have a line and then they push the line forward. There's not just chaos in the streets and police randomly fighting different battles all over the place. It's a very structured, regimented thing that makes sure you take care of the problem quickly and effectively. That is not the case at all here. Watch this. These are just some other clips from cell phone videos. There's no commentary over it. Just watch how the police are just completely scattered and then resort to throwing tear gas, which ultimately is believed to have killed the 125, possibly even more people. Check it out. From the police's standpoint. These are all people running away. This is probably after they launched tear gas or did something to the effect to make all those people run in that direction. Look at these police officers, just like dropping some people. Well, you want to talk about poor police responses? This is not how you handle all of this at all. Yeah, that's wild. Anything else in there in that article that I missed? But yeah, happening in Indonesia. One of the things in that Skyview thing that I thought was fascinating, and I didn't bring any of the numbers up because I wasn't entirely expecting to talk in depth about soccer match deaths. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is that beginning of that clip that we played at the front end, he's like, this is one of the most deadly soccer match attacks or football match attacks in history. And I said, apparently this happens like a decent amount of times, and not necessarily in, I don't want to say third world countries, but in less developed nations. Sometimes, actually, a couple of the biggest ones have happened in Scotland and I think in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was a Scotland football match that like 66 people were crushed in the standing room only pen, which again was a police failure at that level. But anyways, bottom line here is, regardless of how you feel about the police, and I would imagine most of you watching this show are in support of the police officers here in the United States, but regardless of how you feel about them, at least they are not as disorganized as the Indonesian police, whose response was so bad and ended up killing, looks like 125 people at a soccer match. Not good. And any updates on that, we'll bring it to you. The entire league got postponed the next day. Speaking of sports from around the world, this I thought was fascinating, and I feel like is an indication of something kind of bigger stewing in the world, of being able to do things that you shouldn't be able to do, and just because you can effectively pull them off or do them doesn't make it a good idea. Saudi Arabia, which is known primarily as a desert because it is, in fact, a desert, rich with oil, so they've got a ton of money, but they are, again, a desert, was picked or won the bid to host the Winter Games, the Asian Winter Games in 2029. Again, the desert got picked to host the Winter Games in 2029. Watch this short clip from, I believe it's an Indian news outlet talking about the Asian Winter Games in Saudi Arabia, and then kind of we'll discuss on the other side. Check it out.
And Saudi Arabia is known for its desert and intense heat. But believe it or not, the nation will now host the Asian Winter Games in a yet-to-be-built city. And yes, believe it or not, there will be snow as well.
Saudi Arabia, a hot desert country, isn't where you'd expect Winter Games to be held, but it's won the bid to host the 2029 Asian Winter Games. Saudi Arabia does receive some snowfall, but it's very little and very rare. The kingdom is planning to host this at a mountain resort in Neom, but Neom itself is a $500 billion flagship smart city which is still being built and is scheduled to open only in 2026.
So, a desert city is looking that doesn't get very much snow at all, and it's very, very rare even if they do get any snow. Sorry, it's very rare that they get snow, and even if they do, it's not much snow at all. They are going to be the host to the Winter Games in 2029. Saudi Arabia, yada, 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 $500 billion flagship city of Neom. I also read somewhere that this is going to cost, or the entire overhaul of the country, MBS, if you're familiar with him, of Saudi Arabia is going to cost $7 trillion. Guess what? That's all oil money. I think there's several different angles that we could talk about this at. There's a huge component of you're just going to try and have snow in a place that is a desert for most of the year and doesn't really get snow to begin with. That's an interesting component. There's also the energy component. If you want to talk about global warming and all of that stuff, I would imagine that this is going to cost a huge amount of energy and therefore emissions. You want to talk about human rights? Well, not a lot of the Asian countries, if you're looking at, China specifically, have a great track record with human rights, yet so they still get together, and Saudi Arabia, who, again, doesn't have a great human rights track record, is going to get to host a very pollution-oriented event in a city that doesn't have snow, but they're going to ski down the mountains anyway. I don't know. That's kind of it. There's nothing really huge to that story, and it gives me an excuse to move on to this. This was a clip or a video put out by The Daily Show. The Daily Show on Comedy Central with Trevor Noah, who is not a conservative by any stretch of the imagination. Very, very liberal there. But that's okay. People are allowed to think what they want, even though they have wrong opinions often. But they put this out. Your super lefty Comedy Central Daily Show put out this video hitting Kamala Harris. Not something that you would think that a lot of lefties would do. Having said that, I think there's a deeper meaning as to why they're doing this. Let me play this clip. It's funny, and just to set it up, Veep, if you haven't watched it, is a TV show on HBO. I believe it's wrapped. They're not filming any more new seasons. It's with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Elaine from Seinfeld plays the Vice President of the United States. It is one of my favorite shows, if not my absolute favorite show. I've watched through the entirety of Veep 3, maybe 4 times. I think every year, 2 years, I flip through a couple episodes because it is the funniest show and most, I don't want to say relatable, it's the most realistic political show I think ever made. You want to talk about House of Cards or West Wing? Ben Shapiro put it best, I think, when he said, just so you know, working in the White House is not like the show West Wing and it's not like the show House of Cards. It's Veep. In other words, it's a bunch of silly chaos that goes on in Washington, D.C., and the comedy show Veep on HBO captured it very, very nicely. Anyways, that's where this clip is from. They're comparing the satirically written, aloof vice president in the TV show to the current vice president now. It's hilarious. It's worth watching. Check it out.
My fellow Americans, words have many meanings, and sometimes instead of conveying our meaning, they can suggest other meanings.
When we talk about the children of the community, they are children of the community.
Well, we are the United States of America because we are united. And we are states.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
Whatever we have in store cannot be known. The past was once the future. The future is, I should say, unknown.
We got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously.
Obesity is a serious disease, and it needs to be taken seriously.
You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
I hope that clarifies the issue, and this can be the last word on those words.
Certain issues are just settled.
Clearly we're not.
No, that's right. And that's why I do believe that we are living, sadly, in real unsettled times.
So here's, I think, what's bigger pictures happening right now in the political landscape. I think a bunch of your liberal outlets, your lefty outlets, your Democrat-run outlets are realizing that Joe Biden is not going to run in 2024. And also, if he doesn't run in 2024, they can't have Kamala Harris run, or else they will lose. I am a big advocate for Kamala Harris running for president. Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, go for it. I don't think they could win a general if their country would depend on it, they believe. But I don't think Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris would make any headway in a general election against a reasonable candidate, especially on the Republican side. So I say, go for it, Kamala. Go for it, go for it, go for it. You should run for president. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't. Believe in yourself, and you too could lose to Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or whoever's going to run in 2024. Let's see. That's going to do it for us today. I'm tired this morning. It's been a morning, but it's always a morning. I'm sure you're all having a morning too. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media accounts. Just type in Jobob. The Chiron is still wrong. I do have to add a Getter thing, and maybe I will do that later. But I'm also on the Getter app. In case you don't have that, you should get it. It's a great little place with a fun community that really, really likes to engage with interesting political commentary. So if you haven't already, if you give me a follow on Getter, just doing the thing. That's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in this morning. There was something that I was going to mention. There was something big happening tomorrow. I was going to tease that we're going to talk about tomorrow. Well, no, it's happening today, but obviously after the show, so we'll talk about it tomorrow. So we'll get to it tomorrow, whatever it is that is. We'll be on top of it. We didn't really get to any comments today because, I don't know, I'm lazy. And for some reason, all the stuff is running slower this morning. But without further ado, we're going to end it. Also, last little announcement thing. I'm going to be all over the place doing stand-up dates. This Friday in Norco is effectively sold out, but we're trying to add a couple more tickets to see if we can cram some more people. It's a really small place, and we are filming it, so be prepared for a stand-up special coming soon. But effectively, Friday is sold out if you're thinking of coming to the SoCal place. But if tickets are still available, buy it, because we're trying to cram as many of you people in there as possible. Come to Milwaukee. I would love to come to Milwaukee. We'll see if we can get that on the calendar as well. But let's see. Norco, Austin, Newport, South Dakota, Michigan, and then Kentucky are the things that are on the dates as of right now. So we'll see. Anyways, I'll stop jabbering. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. God bless America.